Welcome to the first episode of Buy This Record. This is going to be super simple. My name's G.I. Sanders. I own a record shop called NTX Vinyl just north of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I love records, and I'm going to pick one and I'm going to recommend it to you. And if you want to buy it, you can buy it from me. You can buy it from your favorite record store in your area. You can buy it online. It doesn't matter. The point is, this is a record that you should own. You need it in your collection. And that record is Above by Mad Season. This is an album that came out in 1995. It could be described as a supergroup, but that's hard because this was the only album the band put out, unfortunately. It featured initially Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. He met John Baker Saunders, who was a bass player. He was in a band called The Walkabouts, was his only claim to fame prior to Mad Season. They met in rehab, and they decided they wanted to do a little side project because Mike McCready was in between albums with Pearl Jam. This was in between Vitalogy and No Code. So again, this came out in March of '95, and it was recorded just before that. They brought in Barrett Martin from Screaming Trees to play drums, and they then invited Lane Staley from Alice in Chains and Mark Lanegan from Screaming Trees for vocals. So it absolutely was a supergroup when you lay it out like that, but the fact that this was their only release, Mike McCready has said that one of his motivations for actually inviting Lane into this project was that he had hoped that being around some other sober musicians would actually help Lane out, and he was really struggling at that time with addiction. This came out, again, I mentioned March of '95. Alice in Chains' last studio record with Lane came out, which is the self-titled or Tripod record, came out in November of that year. Or maybe a year later, '96, something like that. So not long after, but they were in between albums. So they had this little break. They went in, they recorded this in like 3 or 4 days, which is just mind boggling. They wrote and recorded it that quickly. And when it came out, it was hugely popular because of the people involved, which is what you'd expect if you've got names like Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and Screaming Trees attached to a project in 1995. Well, it's going to get some attention, and it did. To me, it is a very well-rounded rock record. It's got some influence, some varied influences, jazz, kind of. It's got some really chill stuff, some interesting instrumentation. This is a repress that you can pick up now. It's still available. It's a double LP, features reimagined artwork. The original LP is right here, which is super valuable, and you can't buy this one, at least not for me. You can find it, but it's several $100s. But you can see how they obviously shrunk down the cover, which, like it or not, that's what they did. And then they actually chose a different photo on the back, and the gatefold's completely different on the reissue. But the great part about the reissue is it is done to perfection. The sound is phenomenal. It's a great pressing. I highly recommend it. Standout tracks, I mean, I could just read them all, but if I'm going to pick a couple of favorites, if I'm going to pick kind of the low-key tracks, obviously River of Deceit is a big one. I think Artificial Red is a really cool, chill, kind of bluesy track, as well as Long Gone Day. As far as the heavier stuff, I forgot Wake Up. The intro track is amazing too. I'm Above, Lifeless Dead, I Don't Know Anything, incredible. This actually features some bonus tracks, which are really cool. There's a song on here called Locomotive, which is phenomenal. That was an outtake from these sessions that then Mark Lanegan added vocals to when this was reissued in 2013, which is when this version came out. There's also a cover of I Don't Want to Be a Soldier by John Lennon on this, which is a cover they put out on a John Lennon tribute record in the mid-90s as well. I think their only recorded work that was released outside of Above. So really one of those quintessential albums, I believe, for the mid-90s alternative rock era, along with Temple of the Dog. I think if you're going to talk about supergroups of that day, this one stands out. It's got a really unique vibe. Obviously, with Lane's death, it was put to bed, and there was never another album written. There was talks that it was planned, and then when they kind of got back together, when the surviving members got back together to oversee this reissue, is when they went back and found a couple of the extra tracks and finished them off a little bit without Lane. But I think the songs are phenomenal. I think the vibe in the room was phenomenal. Reading that this was done all just in 3-4 days just blows my mind, because there's some serious depth to the songwriting, to the lyrics. There are some incredible guitar riffs. I mentioned the different instrumentation. They bring some horns in, they bring some hand drums in. It's got a little bit of everything. And the band was just an absolute treasure that I'm glad they got together and they gifted us this album, you know, because they didn't have to. They all, for the most part, had very successful bands during this time. Even Screaming Trees was very popular. They had put out Sweet Oblivion, and they were on a break in between albums, just like Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains were. So again, as far as albums, must-own albums from this era, I think this is one of them for sure. If you're a fan of this album, I know you agree. It's absolutely phenomenal. It still holds up so strong to this day. And the best part is that you can still get it. It's still in print. It's when this video publishes. It's August 2021 right now, and you can grab this right now. I'll put the link in the bio if you want to grab it from me. That's great, again, but just grab it from someone, because these types of albums, and I say this with confidence, will not be in print forever. If you look at some other records by an Alice in Chains or by bands like Smashing Pumpkins or things like that, they've gone out of print recently, and the value on them skyrockets. I don't know if this is going to be one of those, but if I was a betting man, I might bet on that, because this is one of those albums that that is really heralded as a peak moment of the mid 90s, and I could not agree more. Mad Season by Above, an album that you should definitely own, so go buy this record. Thanks a lot. My name's G.I. Sanders. I will come back soon with another record that I think you should buy. Until then, check out the site. It's shop.ntxvinyl.com. Again, I'll put the link to this if you're interested in grabbing it from me. Really appreciate your time, and we'll see you again next time on Buy This Record.